Alright, today let's relax. Just here in this room, have a cup of tea. Well, I don't have it, in this room, just a nice, room, comfortable temperature, and just let's talk about something. I was outside a lot lately, I was, testing the gears in the field to make a review. Oh, by the way, I tested this DICE 55mm f1.8, so that means I'm gonna make a new episode of the gears coming soon. Stay tuned. Okay, I think a lot of people, want to know about like shooting stuff, like color grading stuff, like how I, shoot video stuff. So today I'm gonna talk about the camera basics such as shutter speed, aperture, the ISO, very basic stuff. Well, I'm not the tech guy or engineer, so I just shoot it, but it'll be great if I can share my little knowledge and my style with you, especially people who just started to shoot lately, maybe yesterday or today with you. So basically there are three ways to control the exposure in the camera, shutter speed, aperture, and ISO, but each of them has different features and how they affect the footage also different. So shutter speed is really important in video. If you go up, it gets brighter, and if you go down, it gets darker. It sounds simple, but actually it's a little bit complicated than it looks like. To understand this shutter speed, I think we gotta talk about the frame rate a little bit. Like there are like a 24, 30, 60, 120. They mean how many frames you want in a 1 second. So if it's 24 FPS, there are 24 single pictures in a second. And if it's 60 FPS, that means there are 60 single pictures in a 1 second. So basically more frames you have in a second, more smoother the footage gets. Like you remember that you drew something at the corner of the textbook, like this pose for this page and this pose for this page, and you express the movement by turning the page so fast, like cartoon. Well, this is exactly that. So like I said, the video is a series of single pictures. If it's 24 FPS, there are 24 frames, 24 single pictures in a 1 second. So the shutter speed is how fast you want to close the shutter to take a single picture of whole. Well, first of all, there is something like a universal rule about the shutter speed, like double it of a frame rate. So if it's 24 FPS, the ideal shutter speed would be 1/50. If it's 30 FPS, the 60 seconds would be okay. Is good. So just remember that. For example, 1/50 second means the shutter, which is the eye of the camera, opens for 1/50 seconds. I don't know how long it is, but anyway, it opens for 1/50 seconds. And if it's 1/15 seconds, the shutter opens for 1/15 seconds. And this way, the shutter opens a little bit longer, so it can take the light in more. But at the same time, the image will be kind of dragging, like a weird motion blur. The speed of shutter is not enough to make the flow smooth. And if it's 1/1000 seconds, that means the shutter opens for very, very short time, 1/1000 seconds. So it can't take the light in that much. Plus, the speed of closing the shutter is too fast, and it goes on until the last frame, which is the 24 frames. So it makes the footage kind of choppy, kind of weird, like not natural. So I can say the ideal shutter speed for 24 FPS is 1/50 for the natural movement. It has a little bit of motion blur, which is very natural. It's close to what we see. When we see something fast pass by you, there is some motion blur around it. But if the shutter speed is slower than 1/50, too much of motion blur, and if it's faster than 1/50, way less motion blur. So if it's 24 FPS, 1/50 shutter speed is good. But we can't decide shutter speed without thinking other two things like aperture and ISO, depending on situations. So aperture is where you can control the amount of bokeh and also how much the light you take in. If you go higher number, you get bokeh less, and it get easy to focus on many things. Also, you get less light. And if you go lower number, like f1.8 or 2.8, you get bokeh more, and also you get lights more. That's it. It's not as complicated as shutter speed. So ISO is more simpler. Frankly, in ISO, the camera controls the brightness and exposure mechanically, not like shutter speed or aperture. So if you go up, the image will get brighter, but also it gets the noise. And if you go down, image will get darker but less noise. But three things for controlling the exposure. I mean, the image itself. How do you set each of them? Well, it totally depends on situations, conditions, and locations, and especially how you want to shoot it. So you have to decide the priority. So from now, I'm going to show you guys the way I chose the camera settings for some types of situations. So first, like this. So the priority was pretty much flat. I shot this at 5 a.m. with a sharp and fresh highlight. So the sky was blown out. I had to deal with that without ND filter. Plus, to get this shot, I had to use autofocus. So first thing, aperture had to be higher number so that camera can focus on me easily. Plus, I wanted to focus on me, of course, and landscape too, and reduce the highlights. So I decided to go with f13. The focus is good, but still it was too bright. So I changed the shutter speed to 1/500 and ISO is still 800. There was no big motion, so I thought it would be fine with this 1/500 shutter speed. But it's not the ideal. And although there is a long distance between me and the landscape, the camera could focus on both of them pretty much equally. So I think problem solved. So next one is this. At the same location, time, and light condition, but I needed the strong bokeh to emphasize this object. For testing, this is DJI's 55mm f1.8, so of course I wanted to use f1.8, but it was so bright and the highlight is so strong, so only what I could do was speed up shutter speed to 1/1000. Well, usually I shouldn't do that because everything is gonna be kind of weird, especially in the scene which has the motion. But I thought it would be fine with this shutter speed because there was no particular movement, but this slow camera pan. Eventually it turned out it was okay, as you can see. So last one is this low light situation. The location didn't have any light without this headlight and car light. I was in the mountain, so my priority was to have the light enough to show people what was going on there. So my only shutter speed choice was 1/50, and to maximize the low light ability of this lens, which is f1.8, so the aperture is f1.8, and the problem was ISO. Well, this changes depending on each people and the camera. Like Sony A7III, it is really strong for low light situation, but that was A7III, and some people do a couple of 1000 ISO, but to me upper ISO limit is around 2000 or 2500. There was a headlight and the car light, so I decided to go with 2000 ISO. So like those, you need to change the camera setting depending on situations, location, and the light conditions. There, when you're actually, my voice is kind of breaking. There, when you're actually shooting, you have to, analyze the condition of that location and think what and how you want to shoot and how you want to do about that footage when you edit it. So if you just started to shoot maybe yesterday or maybe 3 minutes ago before you watch this video, it might sound a little bit difficult, but what you can do is have the basic and go out a lot and shoot a lot and edit it a lot, just practice a lot That's it. But what I can advise, well, there is a few. I have a little knowledge, but having the limit helps you to decide a camera setting. Like for example, lower limit of shutter speed is 1/50, 1/24 FPS, and upper limit is maybe 1/1000. You know, depending on the situation. Sometimes I do a very slow shutter speed for a certain situation, for a certain scene, like I did in a short film called Osmosis. This scene.
Slave and meat, the mind serves the body. In between the body and mind.
And upper limit ISO is maybe like 2000 and 2500, like I said before. So those things will help you to, you know, decide a camera setting and make less mistakes. Well, if you have ND filter, it will help you a lot, but it's just gear. Before that, you need to, you know, be able to control your camera. So that's it for me today. Sometimes, you know, like this, sit, relax, just talking about, you know, anything, camera, gears is good. So if you too enjoyed, show me a thumb and then hit the subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. さあ、こっからちょっとね、やばい。もう動画が切れちゃいそうだから、なんだっけ、30秒でいくよ。3、2、1、GO。そう、これ、ザイスの 55mm F1.8 を山で撮ってきました。で、本当はもう深夜にハイクし始めて、そこでまあなんかいろいろ恐怖とか気配とかそういったものをテーマに作品撮ろうとしたんだけど、マジで怖すぎてそれが叶わなかった。もう入った瞬間に野生の光った目とパチンって合っちゃって、もうこれは引き返さなきゃと思って、急遽違うの撮りました。